And welcome to That Squirrel Speaks. Today is Tuesday. It's Wednesday, June 6th, and this is episode 223, I think. Oh my goodness, my mama's birthday is on Friday. Send her a birthday wish. She's very knitworthy and loves socks like a crazy person. If that helps you with your birthday wishing. So send her another birthday wish in case you didn't really feel like you knew Mama enough the first time. Just, here you go. Here's another chance. Okay. Thanks. She really appreciates it. I appreciate it too. Oh my gosh, how are you? I hope you're doing well. Oh my goodness, it's beautiful here. We went from winter to summer, but now we're getting a few days of spring, which I really appreciate, universe. Thank you. My hair is a little especially weird because I just got back from taking the dogs on a walk and I wore a hat because it's so sunny. But now my hair is doing especially weird things. What do I do? I don't even know. I'm wearing my Bentley sweater, which is by Greene. I think it's called a Bentley cardigan, which is by Greene, and this is Barrett wool in the Wisconsin woolen fingering weight, and this is Quaker gray. I love this sweater ever so much. I highly recommend this yarn. It is one of my favorites. That's right. One of my favorites. It's highly enjoyable. And so yeah, it's really not reasonably cool enough to wear a sweater in reality, but after we took the walk and we were just lying around the house recovering from our walk, it got a little chilly. So I felt like I needed a woolly sweater. And then as I was preparing to get the podcast together, I was like, oh my gosh, why did I think I needed a woolly sweater? But now I'm sitting again. Okay. Oh my gosh, I hope you're doing well. What's going on with you? This episode will have shenanigans. It will have knitting. It will have no spinning. But I have been spinning, but I just have projects on the wheel. One is almost done. And then it will have some shameless self-promotion. Let's do shameless self-promotion right now. I know I usually save it for the end, but okay, I'll save it for the end. I'm sorry. Didn't mean to buck the trend. That's not even the right word, but you know what I mean. Let's talk about shenanigans. So last weekend was the Hoosier Hills Fiber Festival, which is the first weekend of June every year in Franklin, Indiana, which is about half an hour south of me, so it's quite close. And every year I completely forget that it's happening, but luckily I follow Knit Spin Farm on Instagram, and she's always like, oh, I'm making this for the thing. And I was like, oh, I forgot about the thing. So this year I decided to take a class. Last year I took a broom making class, which was highly entertaining, if not particularly useful. I really enjoyed it. But it was to make a tiny little broom, which is like very cute and witchy looking, and if I had a hearth, I would be sweeping the pants off of it with my tiny witchy broom, but I don't, so. But this year I took a dyeing class. And I apologize, now I remember why I went in that room. When I was getting ready for the podcast, I went into the room and I just stood there for like 3 minutes wondering why I had gone into that room. I went into that room to get the handout from the class I took so I could tell you who the instructor was. But I didn't remember that when I was standing in the room for the express purpose of getting that handout. You know what I mean, don't you? Right? There's this theory that like our brains are just not evolutionarily designed for doorways. Have you heard this theory? I don't know if this is true or not, but I liked it. I like to think of it whenever something like this happens because it makes me feel less like a loser who can't remember anything. But yeah, there's something about like our brains are just not really evolutionarily ready to accept stark transitions of landscape like a doorway represents. And so when we go through the doorway, our brain gets a little fritzy, and that's why you lots of times lose what's in your short-term memory at that moment. I like that. And then if like we were a natural Stone Age folk selves and we're just like walking through a wider landscape, those transitions don't happen very frequently, and therefore you don't forget stuff as much. I would be curious to know. That's an interesting thought. Like, do people who live in open plan houses have less issues with forgetting things than people who don't? I don't know. It's just an interesting thought. Okay, try to justify how my brain works. What were we talking about? Hoosier Hills Fiber Festival. That's right. I took a dyeing class with a gentleman whose name I don't know because it's in the other room. But he was very cute and very entertaining. And I will admit the first like 3 minutes of the class I thought, uh-oh. I mean, it's a $45 class with a $20 instruction or materials fee, which means you take home 2 skeins of yarn. So it's a very reasonable price point, like, right? So, you know, you're kind of rolling the dice. You don't know these instructors from Adam. So the first, maybe the first 10 minutes of the class, I thought, he was very harried. It was very warm, and he was like discombobulated because something wasn't working out right. And I just was like, But ultimately it was a very good class, and he was very knowledgeable. And again, once the discombobulation thing happened, which I totally get, like that's how I would work too. Like I would get discombobulated and just be like, so once that was resolved, he did get much better. So it was actually quite a good class. It was a class in which we dyed a gradient and a glass, and then we also dyed a speckle skein. So here's my gradient. Now don't make fun of me. I was very boring in my color choices. But quite frankly, when you're standing there with like 15 jars of dye in front of you, and there's no color cards or anything, right? You're just going off of the name of the dye. And I was just like, safety, green to blue. Okay. And also like chartreuse, right? Like that was what this one was called, was chartreuse. And so in my mind, I thought, maybe it'll be like a scummy, fun. It wasn't, but it's still cute, right? And I still learned the technique. But so this is my gradient. You basically do, skein of yarn, but then you make it into, basically you're making it into 4 mini skeins that are just connected. And then you're dyeing these all in mason jars and then putting them in the microwave to set them. But yeah, it's pretty cute, right? I left it in mini skeins so you guys should see it. So there's that. Oh, I forgot something. I'll show you the next one. And then there was also a speckled portion of the yarn of the class. Now, you'd be like, oh, isn't that interesting? You took a speckled yarn class and you dyed a skein of yarn without any speckles in it. Well, A, that was pretty salty of you. And B, yes, I accept that is the case. So I dyed this skein, which is like pinky peachy orange. And in my head, the method of doing the sparkles, I'm going to say sparkles, I think a lot. The method that are doing the speckles is to have a very low water content in your yarn. And I think maybe I had too much water in my yarn. I don't think I wrung it out enough. And so I think that's in part. I think also in part was the application of the sprinkles. It involved mixing the dye, powder dye, in with salt, and then shaking that onto the yarn. And I think because the pink, okay, it's twofold. I think in my head, I thought hot pink because that's what I wanted. I wanted hot pink on orangey peachiness. So in my head, it was hot pink, but the thing just said pink. So I think there was A, that, and then B, the pink dye was light in color. So when it was mixed in with the salt, it was very hard to see how much you were applying to the yarn. Unlike the darker colors, which kind of would like strike and show up on the yarn as you were shaking them on, the pink was a little bit more challenging to see. So it did not strike very fast. And then that combined with the fact that I think, again, I had a slightly wetter skein than I needed. It didn't really sprinkle as much as dye, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But that said, I actually do like it. It's not what I envisioned at all, but I do actually like how it turned out. So, So I will rewind this, but then what I forgot to say earlier is, oh my gosh, thank you to the Patreon people. What? Thanks to the Patreon and PayPal supporters of the podcast, I am now moving to an additional episode every month. That's right, kids. Send them out thank yous. Extra episode of me. Okay, you asked for it. I'm just saying. So, Patreon and PayPal supporters, I'm doing prizes. And the prizes will go out the prizes will be announced the first weekend of July. So I have 3 sets of stitch markers that I made just for you. Oh, that's right. I made them just for you. And only you and I have them. So that's pretty fancy. But also, I will also give away those 2 skeins of yarn. But I will reskein them for you so they're not such a hot mess. Because they are kind of a hot mess right now. I'm trying to get to a needle so I can put these on a needle. But you will also be eligible for these. It's a set with 1 bird and 6 hearts. Let me see if I can do this super professionally. Because you know, that's how I roll, right? Loink. Oh my gosh. Oh, I have a shawl attached to these needles. Let's see. Don't you just love this podcast so much that I'm so willing to fail for you? Oh my gosh, right. So, you get these 3 super cute glass hearts, and then this super rad pottery bird who's over here. Oh, nobody wants to see your elastic band. Bam! So aren't these super cute? So those are your prizes. So there'll be 3 sets of stitch markers, and then 2 of you will get, well, actually I'll just find another skein of yarn. So you get a skein of yarn and a set of stitch markers. What? Thanks, Patreon, PayPal people. You're the best. Back to Harrisville. That's not where it is. Back to Hoosier Hills. Okay. So I took the class. It was very enjoyable. And then also, I actually didn't purchase anything at the festival. I kind of got there later than I anticipated, and then by the time the class was over, everything was closing down. So I just kind of did not figure out my time correctly. But since I worked so hard helping Joanna break down her booth, which, and by so hard I mean I lifted like 3 boxes that weighed like a pound. I'm sorry. Joanna insisted that I take this bat. What? She totally insisted, y'all. I did not ask, I promise. She insisted. In my head. Is that not gorgeous? Right? Like, oh, ooh, look, I'm a crustacean now. And I live in this little beautiful bat under the sea. Right. I'm going to grow a tail and eat only kelp forever. That's how pretty this bat is. Oh my gosh. So that, again, that's Knit Spin Farm if you don't the podcast. You don't know what I'm talking about. Knit Spin Farm is Joanna Spring, and this bat is made with Angelina, BFL, Corriedale, Silk, and Targhee, and it is gorgeous. Her bats are always insane. I should just put like some sort of animatronic face on this, and then that's what the podcast will be. I'm just saying. Now somebody's gonna mow their lawn. Ugh. Really? I hope that's not too loud for you. Anyway. What was I gonna say? Speaking of lawn mowing, transition. So that was the thing we did last weekend. The weekend before last was Memorial Day weekend here in the U.S. So that's a 3-day holiday, 3-day weekend for us. And so we went to some super hippy dippy festival. Oh my my gosh, though. At the Super Hippy Dippy Festival, which, by the way, is like on a nature preserve in southern Indiana, and it is super pagan hippie-tastic. We just went to visit friends for the day. It was intense, y'all. Enjoyable, but intense. But neither here nor there. Some dude was totally playing the concertina, and there was a lady with him. They were actually both doing other things as well, musician-wise. He later was not playing the concertina, which I was kind of disappointed by, but what is happening with that concertina? I've always heard concertinas before, and they sounded like baby accordions, which I'm not against the accordion. They're a very festive instrument, but I've never been like, oh, okay, something was with his concertina which made it sound insanely folky and beautiful. Like, it didn't have as much reverb. Maybe it was just like the way, like his technique for playing it, like, you know, because it's the, do you know what a concertina is? Like a tiny accordion. I mean, somebody's gonna be like, no, they're entirely different. They're kind of the same. Llama's got a squeeze box. They're like kind of like hexagony, octagony, and then they're like this big, and then there's like a lots of different flavors, because now I've researched it. There's like Anglo concertinas and English concertinas and all sorts of concertinas. And there are like 15 key concertinas and 30 key concertinas and 48. And by the way, concertina is a fun word to say. Just FYI. Anyway, he was playing concertina and she was playing mandolin. And they were doing like some sort of like, you know, folky, jiggy kind of sound. They were getting jiggy with it. But anyway, it was so cool sounding. So again, it did not have the like, you know, like the, I don't know, reverb's not the word. I'm not a musician, y'all. But it didn't have that like squeeze box sound of the accordion, or like, I tried to listen to other things on YouTube and they all have that sound. But his was very light and folky sounding. And again, it just sounded like a very interesting, it sounded like a reed piano. It's almost like what it sounded like, right? It didn't have that air sound. And maybe it was just like my distance from him and like the miking situation. That could have very well been it too. But whatever it was, it created a magical sound, which I really loved and I would love to recreate. Even though I'm not a musician. But I'm almost 40 now. And I feel like I need to do something epic for 40-ish, right? Besides like learn tarot and do something else weird. Like, what? Maybe, I mean, I thought it was going to be banjo, but now this concertina thing's shaking its bottom at me. Concertina bottom shaking. So do you know anything about this? I should have really just, I was with other people and we were like doing a circuit of like looking at stuff, but I really should have just been like, y'all go ahead. I'm going to stand here and stalk concertina dude and find out more about this concertina. That's what I really should have done. But I thought I'll just look it up. But now, anyway, what was going on with that concertina? It was amazing. You're like, I did not tune in to talk about concertinas. Well, you are listening to them now, and you didn't tune in. That's an old thing to say. So there. Anyway, what was I going with this? Oh, so we did that, and I was in love with the concertina, and my heart was all fluttery over it. And then we did a lot of yard work also. Oh my gosh. Okay, like how do I even talk about... So I have this weird relationship with landscaping. Okay, no, I have no relationship with landscaping at all. Like I have tried many times. Okay, I've tried like half a dozen times to do something with the front of our house. Because we have this very tall brick porch. And so there's like but there's also these two giant trees in front of our house, which means that our house is in shade. The front of our house never gets direct sun because it's east facing, so it only gets morning sun. But it's also like our house is here and their house is over here. So the east sun only hits our house like when the sun is like at this exact angle, and then the trees are there. So there's sun on our house and like this when there's no leaves on the trees, but in growing seasons, there's no sun on the front of our house. So, and I know I should find something, but like I've tried many a thing over the years and just nothing thrives in that place. I'm like trying to like ease on these hydrangeas right now, like just really trying, but I can just tell they're like, we need more photosynthesis. And I'm like, I'm sorry, dudes. You know, So like I alternate between really wanting to have like beautiful, lush green, beautiful things and then being like, oh my gosh, this is such a waste of time and money. That is not in any way to say that I'm judging you for either having an insanely beautiful yard or a total pit. Okay? You do you. 100%. But I have tried to like do the fancy thing and then I just get into this like, dude, I'm working class and not fancy. And so I'm just like, but then every once in a while I'm like, I want to be fancy. And then the world's like, no, you're not fancy. You know what I mean? Okay. So that's kind of my relationship with landscaping. I've tried to have a garden in my backyard, like a vegetable garden, and it's been mildly successful. But we also have a giant tree in our backyard, which is coming down on Friday. That's right. So next year I'm going to have a garden back there, a vegetable garden, which I'm very excited about. Now I have no excuse if it doesn't do well. Oh, I hadn't thought about that. But anyway, in part because of that tree just like bumming me out, and it's like, and then the fact that there's maybe a black walnut tree that's also poisoning my yard. Maybe not. Maybe it's just the sun. I'm hoping it's just the sun. Because really nothing dies. It just never gets to fruit. It doesn't fruit very well. So I'm really thinking that's a sun issue primarily. Anyway. All of these factors have gone together. Oh, and the fact that we've had like the most insane mosquito-tastic backyard forever now has created a backyard that has become like, okay, you know, like there's the liminal space, right? Which is like the spiritual place between landscapes where like there's this, like the, theory goes that like our Paleolithic people, our ancestors, our Stone Age ancestors and stuff, like that there was this reverence for transitional landscapes. So like when you were moving from like bogs and things like moving from like land to water, those transitional landscapes had a lot of spiritual significance. Okay? Are you with me? Okay, it's like my backyard is like the opposite of that. It's like a transitional space that has negative spiritual significance. And like actually you're just rushing through it because it's actually like stripping your spiritual self away from you as you're walking through it. It's my transition space between the inside and the outside, and it's just like to be moved through and gotten out of because the mosquitoes are eating you, and it's like all right. So that's how I feel about my yard right now, except for the fact. Oh my gosh, y'all are crazy to be listening to me. Okay, moving on. Except for the fact that the weekend before last, we decided that we needed to do a big cleanup because it was just getting ridiculous. And so while I did not have significant plans for the yard, we knew we were getting a tree taken down, and so we needed to like clean up in general. And by clean up, I mean like pick up 7 years worth of dead bamboo leaves. My husband has this deep faith in like self-mulching, which is a lie. He really feels like that if he just like mows up the leaves that they will be self-mulching, and that's not how it works. Anyway. So like, and then like 17 years of gumballs, okay, not really, but feels like that because our neighbor who is also getting his tree taken down has a gumball tree, like the gum trees that have like those spiky balls on them. And really, like, it's like the most insane amount of biomass it generates every year. I don't even understand it. Like, I can't believe we can't eat those things because we would be having gumball soup every day of the week. But, so like, just, but I tell you what, after we did that work, and it really wasn't a ton of work. I mean, it was a good amount of work. And it was, of course, we picked like the hottest weekend to do it because we're dumb. But it was so worth it. And we didn't do anything fancy because again, we're waiting for that tree to get taken down, and my garden boxes are totally empty, and there's no like nice furniture out there. It's still a hot mess. But for one thing, somehow magically we must have disturbed the mosquito infestation because now it doesn't feel as mosquito-y anymore. Like I can actually go outside and not feel like I'm being flayed alive by blood-sucking insects. What? Self-mulching doesn't work, husband. understand. My husband is such a hard worker when he's motivated to work. Like, he just worked, like, I mean, constantly for like 4 hours in the yard. And it was not cool. It was like 85 degrees, 90 degrees. We had a fire going because we were trying to burn up some of this self-mulching stuff. So like that was happening. And like, I'm pretty intense worker too. Okay, maybe not intense, but fairly good worker. And even I was like, what? And he just kept going. So like, he's such a hard worker when he wants to work. But to motivate him to work sometimes is more hard work than I have in me. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm like, woo, I motivated you to work. That was my job. Now it's time for you to take over. I cannot also contribute to the actual working part because I'm exhausted from motivating you to do anything. Anyway, funny husband story. Not really. The other day I was like taking his laundry out of the washing machine and into the dryer, and there was change in the washing machine, and I had this strange moment where I was like, I kid you not, I think this is probably the first time in 13 years of being together that I've had to take his change out of the washing machine. That's how like methodical he is. Like, I can't remember not to leave a tissue in my pocket. Every other load of laundry has tissues in it because I can't be trusted with anything. I'm not even kidding you. I think it's the first time in 13 years, other than like a stray penny, which could have just been like in the crease of a pocket, but there was like actual, like a, like a small amount of change. I think this is the first time in 13 years that's ever happened. Anyway, moving on. Oh my gosh, is that enough ridiculousness for you? Of course it is. Let's talk about knitting. Okay. Again, I don't have any spinning to show you. Oh wait, let's do this too. Okay, so, well, maybe I'll just talk about that next time. I probably have rambled on enough, right? Okay, I'll just show you briefly. So, also this week, I decided that we needed to stop buying sandwich bags. So, I decided to make some reusable snack bags. Tova has a set of them in her lunch. You might see this fabric again later in a shirt that I also made, but teaser. So I purchased an iron-on Pellon that is allegedly food safe. It's Pellon 875, and it basically makes your fabric into like a laminated fabric. I will say it is not, I tried to iron it on with a regular house iron and I was not successful, probably because I wasn't patient enough. But I have like a press, just like a home press. It's nothing commercial or anything. But I was able to get much better adhesion with that. That said, I think it actually works better to put it on the wrong side of the fabric. So this is the fabric and then this is the wrong side. So that's ultimately what we decided to do. What else do we need to say? Oh, you'll see that these edges are serged. I did serge the edges because you do need to finish the edges in some way. You'd think, oh, it's got this Pellon on it that's like a plasticky Pellon. It won't fray. However, after I threw this one just within I threw this sample in with every load of laundry we've had since then. So I think that's been 3 loads of laundry. And it does come loose. Like the adhesion is not permanent. Now it may just be something I did wrong, or maybe this is like a fluke. This was the first one that I did. So it could be that I just did something wrong, but it did come loose. Now that said, it's still perfectly functional. But I think it's also another good reason to put it on the inside of the fabric because, as you can see, maybe, it has a bit of a cloudy nature after it's been washed a few times. And also it just would look messy if it were on the outside of your pad. This one I did not finish the seams at all, and you can see that I have some strings. This was just the first one that I did. That said, it's still holding together just fine. I did a zipper. Lots of people do Velcro. I just kind of have I appreciate Velcro, but it always gets thread in it for me, and it just drives me crazy. So I just don't like to use Velcro if I can avoid it. So I just put a zipper in mine. I did not line them. So again, they're just straight up that weird Pellon stuff. And at the first, I don't know if you can tell. You can tell a little bit the difference in the sound, right? Before it's washed, it's much stiffer. And so I've sent Tova, and again, I put them in the washing machine several times just to test it for y'all. But you don't really need to put them in the washing machine unless something happens and the fabric part gets dirty, because you can just wipe out the inside. Or wash out the inside and just hang it like you would if you're washing out your sandwich bags or whatever. What was I going to say? The reason I just serged the outside edges and didn't just sew them together with the serger was that I also, with putting the zipper in, I guess you could do that with serger, but I'm just not as familiar with it. So I just went ahead and serged them up ahead of time and then sewed them together. I found to put a full sandwich in, I needed to make 8-inch squares, but then that makes a very big bag. So this one is only 8 by 6. I felt like the 8-inch was pretty good for the zipper because you lose a little bit on the edges unless you want to like hand tack them down, which I don't. So, I mean, that's pretty good size to put your hand in. It doesn't need to be that big, but I wouldn't go much smaller than 7. This one started out as 8 by 6. And really, we could definitely go 8 by 5 to be reasonable. So yeah, I don't know. We'll see how they do long term. I also did order a few silicone bags. And I'm sure that those are going to do really well. They are, however, quite pricey. So Tova's not bad about losing her lunch things because she takes a lunchbox with her. So she doesn't have trouble losing them. But those sandwich bags are like, the minimum is like $20 for 4. Right? It's very spendy. But they're silicone, and silicone is really, A, quite durable, B, easy to take care of, and C, is recyclable if you, it's usually not recyclable with like your curb recycling, but you can, it is a recyclable product. So, that was a lot of me talking about plastic bags. Hey! I forgot to ask this in the original episode, so as I was editing, I realized that I forgot to ask. So here we go. So if you would like to just put in YouTube comments or on the Rav page or wherever, what your experience are with any of these products. So whether it's making your own snack bags, like quite frankly, I'm curious, does it work to do the nylon on the inside? Have you done that? Does stuff stay relatively fresh? Like I'm not worried as much about pretzels and things like that as I am about like sandwich bread, because my kid totally likes the like white sugar bread. So I'm curious about the nylon. I'm curious about, some people just use 2 layers of regular quilter's cotton for theirs. I'm curious to know about that. What else am I curious? I'm very curious to know about the beeswax wraps. Hello, beeswax. Super exciting. So sometimes people use the beeswax wraps to do like actual like wraps for sandwiches. Sometimes people use it to mold around like bowls and things like that instead of using plastic wrap. So I would be curious to know with your experiences with that, whether you purchased any of these whether you purchased any of these products or whether you're making it yourself, because you can totally do the beeswax fabric yourself. Some people use the jojoba oil because it's supposed to be more antimicrobial. I don't know. Does your beeswax wrap mold? Does it? I won't judge you and think you're dirty. Mold's the thing. It happens. It happens on super fancy cheese. So, I mean, it's basically super fancy. Mold is. What else? Have you used the silicone sandwich bags or snack bags? What else are you doing? Are you freezing everything in bulk and canning jars? I want to know. Tell me all your knowledges. Share with the group. So you can either put that on YouTube comments or in the Ravelry page. Maybe I'll make like a special like Planet Plastic Messed Me Up thread. Let me just clarify. No judging. So whether you're using like bootleg homemade things, whether you're buying super fancy things, don't throw anybody shade, y'all. We're all in different economic boats. Well, we're all in a big boat together, but our households are all their own economic boats. So whatever you're doing, I'm curious to know what it is. All right, back to the program. Okay, now let's talk about knitting. I finished my Canyonlands shawl, and Canyonlands is a pattern by Teasdale. So it's all done. This is hand spun. It is a braid by Knit Spin Farm and a braid by Spun Right Round. So this is almost 8 ounces of yarn. And I would say that it was probably like a sport weight. Maybe no, I think it was like a sport weight. So it's all done. To block it, I just soaked it in Tufts Woolen's wool soak, and then just laid it across my, like I have a gull wing drying rack, you know, it's a foldable metal drying rack for your clothes. So I just laid it on top of that to dry out. I did not block it or anything. So it only blocked through the weight of itself. I will say, if you like a triangle shawl, this lays beautifully. I mean, the combination of the garter, I think, with the sideways, which, you know, that's where the elasticity of it lies, with this little bit of shaping here, somehow it just snugs right onto the shoulder. And you can even kind of fold it up a little bit if you want a little collar for your neck. And it just grabs right onto your shoulders and sits there very nicely. So I highly recommend it. It's a very easy pattern. It was good television knitting. It got a little monotonous towards the end, but with a hand spun or like a spin cycle yarn or or Noro, anything that has a long color change or some sort of visual interest, I think kind of breaks up that monotony of just garter stitch with a few little bit of shaping bits. But it was very enjoyable. Still, this is my favorite stripe. So that is going out as a gift. Bam! And then I did a little bit more work on my Ishnana sweater by Ysolda. So I have gotten to the arm. My shaping on this sweater is totally off. Like, my hip decreases are too high up and my bust increases are too low down. Whatever. I think the ideal thing is to have your bust increases stop 2 inches below the apex or the fullest part of your bust. I don't know, 4 inches below. Whatever. It wear. So I have started the front. There's 2 different versions. Well, there's more than 2 because there's also 2 different sleeve links. But there's 2 different versions of the front of this sweater. So I have started the little lacy bit for my version. And then the back cabling section is delicious. And really a pretty basic section for as nice of a texture as you get. Does that make sense? It's not it's cabling, and you do have to look at the pattern in terms of at the beginning of the row, okay, which one am I opening up? Which one am I closing? What yarn overs am I doing? But it's not a terribly complicated endeavor. So for the trade-off of what you get visually, I think it's good. This is Quince & Company Finch in Carrie's yellow. And so yeah, hopefully I'll get it done before summer's over. I'm enjoying that quite a lot. And then the other thing I have to show you is new. And that is the Buccaneer shawl. The Buccaneer shawl is by Justyna Lorkowska. And it looks like this. There are two versions. There's this version which has the lacy feather and fan or old shale or whatever you'd like to call it. And there's one that has, that's considered like a more gender neutral, or there's one that doesn't have like a yarn over, so it's more just like a blunt, like a zigzag, more of a geometric look to it. And they both come in the same pattern. And so it's a shawl that uses 2 skeins of your main color, and it's fingering weight, and then a set of mini skeins. They need to be at least 20 grams, if I'm not mistaken, and 6 of them is how the pattern is written. So here's mine so far. Right. So this is Linneman Fiber Arts. The brown is his showcase yarn, which is 490 yards of superwash merino in the black walnut colorway. So that's the brown. And then the blues are his blues. He has a different card now because he's fancy. But his blues are the blue steel gradient on his Soliloquy base. And it's 150 grams. So they're 30 gram mini skeins. And it's 650 yards total. And it's a BFL, superwash BFL. So this is what the mini skein set is. Of course, they come as actual mini skeins. So this is the color gradient as is. Notice I did say I needed 6 skeins for the mini skein section. So I had this, which is a Quince & Company, I think it's Glacier or something like that. But it's a Quince & Company Finch. And it is not an exact match by any stretch of imagination, but it's a fairly good value match. It is a bigger jump, I think, in value than the others, maybe by like a half step. And it's not as green as the blues and the blue steel gradient. However, I think it's an acceptable substitution. I'm sure if I had called Steve and Andy or emailed Steve and Andy, they would have been happy to give me a skein on one end of that. I shouldn't say that. Maybe they wouldn't, but I was okay with just using what I had on hand. And I think in the finished object, I don't think you're going to be like, ooh, that's not quite green enough. I don't think it's going to show up that much. So there's that, right? So far this is very enjoyable. You start off with what I now consider the traditional banana hammock beginning, where you just have some like wool undies. And you giggle with your partner about that. Or undies for me, the bigger size. And then you go into, again, the old shale of the feather and fan. And then it's shaped very much like the Find Your Fade, where you square off the triangle at the end, just different shaping. But anyway, I've liked it. I've had this, I hate to admit it, I think I've had this gradient set for, it's been at least 2 years, right? Maybe 3, but it's been at least 2 years. And so I love the color of it. I just haven't found what I wanted it to be. But I saw this pattern like a year ago and thought, oh yes, that'll work. So that's what the black one is. So I'm really excited about it. I was kind of like, oh, I don't know if I really want another giant shawl like that. However, I am knitting it at a fairly tight gauge. Not like super, but I think for the larger shawls that helps me. Because when they're at a looser gauge and they're that big and heavy, when you're knitting them out of a worsted spun or merino or something like that, which is what this is, I think they just get so stretchy outy. For me, personally, it's hard to manage them. So I'm hoping that knitting it at a tighter gauge will make it more useful to me than perhaps the gauge I knit my Find Your Fade at, which is too loose. I really think it's a beautiful shawl, but I knit it too loose and it's just, it's like that all the time. So I didn't want that for this one. I really like it. Can you tell by how much I'm holding it up? So that is all of my knitting. Now let's talk about shameless self-promotion. Let's do it. If you're not interested, I'll see you next time. But oh my gosh, you should totally stick around for just a second. Okay, so if you are coming to Super Summer Knit Together in Nashville, Tennessee in July with the Knit Girls, That's what's going to be first. So your pre-orders are going up June 8th. And they'll be up through June 14th. Now, I don't have my little tags yet. Yours will it will have the wooden tag that says Super Summer Knit Together 2018 Fat Squirrel Fibers. But I don't think I'm actually even going to get them in before I put the pre-order up. I may have made a mistake and forgot to order them on time. Oops, I'm a human. But this is the fabric. Right. Do you love it? I dig it. It's a great color. It's a great fun mod print. And then somehow bees make everything even better. Right. Yay! So there's that. So that's June 8th through June 14th. And I will deliver those to you at SSK. I will set up a table at some point during the retreat to hand out pre-orders only. Or you can just pick it up at the market. Okay. So then, beginning June 9th, I will have a llama pre-order. What? I actually did not intend these to coincide, but Christy Glass Knits is going to have this on her episode, and so I did want to make those available for folks. So on June 9th, I will start a pre-order for llama bags. They'll be available in sweater size and Aran sweater. They will not be available in large wedge size. The print is just too large to be reasonable on a smaller bag. So, oh my gosh, do you love them? Now they look like they're reading a little limey green on here. They are actually like a very yellowy color, which I can't exactly explain. They're highly enjoyable. Hopefully I can get a better photograph of them. Oh, so cute. And look at him. You can kind of see the color a little bit better. It's the same color that's on his back. Oh, there you go. That's what color it is. Ah, perfect tint. That color is actually what color this llama is. It's just hard for the camera to understand that color. But it's super cute. So those will go up June 9th. And they will be up until the pre-orders slots sell out. And if they sell out, don't worry, I'll do another round, but it'll just be after SSK. So it'll be in August probably, or later in July. And then finally, June 15th, I'll do a pre-order of these Harry Potter bags. What? So it's like grown-up Harry Potter fandom. It's a gentler Harry Potter fandom. It's super tastic cuteness, but not in this super cartoony way. I don't know. But I really love the colors, and who doesn't love Harry Potter? So those will go up June 15th. Again, that'll be a limited pre-order. But if they sell out, I'll do another run of them because they're really fun and I love them. The inside of all of these is just your plain unbleached lining. And then, yeah. So they'll all have handles and all that good stuff, but yeah. So SSK June 8th through June 14th. Llamas June 9th until they sell out. Harry Potter June 15th until they sell out. The llamas I actually will do in the morning. Usually I do everything at 9 p.m. Eastern. The llamas I will do it in the morning. Just because. Oh, there, you can see that color. That's the color of the llamas. And SSK. If you love the SSK pattern, I may do them later in the year. I don't know that I will because it is so summery that I'm not sure by the time I get back if I'll have summer left by the time I do all these other pre-orders. My gosh, right? I think that's all. If you stuck around, yay you. I hope you have a great week, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye.